So now we're getting into the metrics, and this screen shows a comparison of how we look at inside and outside counsel spending. I follow this formula to make sure that we always compare the same areas. So things like costs for annual reports and things that are included in our budget that are there just for a convenient place to get them paid, I take those out of our inside spending amount, and so things that I report year over year are pretty much consistent. So in that total inside spend area, you can see that we actually decreased slightly, but it's pretty much stayed the same over the 3 years. In the outside counsel spend, you can see that we had a dip in '09, and then it went up a little bit in 2010. And the total kind of just gives us a combined look at that. So, of course, when I see that little shred of bar that is bigger than, and the green bar is bigger than the red bar, my quest was to find out why. I mean, I knew I could draw my hypothesis because I'm looking at this all year, but my boss wants to know, and we want to be able to report it to see if it made sense. So this bar actually this is sort of now I've carved out just that outside counsel spend, and I have this chart because it's pretty amazing. I don't have the values in here for obvious reasons, but if I gave you the value for FY04 and compared it to FY09, you'd see that we paid half of what we paid in FY04. So that's a huge savings, and really shows how implementing all these different processes and technology really helped us get a handle on what was really too high back in 2004. And again, we see that FY10 was a little bit higher, so I started on my quest to find out why. So I carved out that little piece to see where did we spend the extra money. And I knew that we've spent most of our money on this legacy litigation and patent prosecution. Well, patent prosecution spend is good spend. We're protecting our assets, and hopefully that ends up being, equaling higher revenues. And so this 27% made sense because we got a little more money in our budget for that and spent it. The legacy spend made sense because we have a cost-sharing arrangement with insurance, and that percentage temporarily changed in the last quarter. So we were able to show, wow, the impact of that, that's what it is. And then that other slice, I wasn't too worried about that because we had one piece of litigation that was expensive that we're actually going to be collecting on. We'll be recouping some of the money this year. So sort of a little idea of what I look at. And then really quickly going through this legacy spend, this is astonishing, right? So you can see that in FY10, almost half of the spending is it's that spend we're trying to spend less on. The green bar showing that patent prosecution, as I said, that's the good spend, so we're pretty happy with that. And it's that orange bar that's actually pretty exciting because if you compare that to '08, that's the stuff that we're actually managing. And so we got better at some of our practices, and we insourced things we needed to insource. And that value is actually very good for a company our size and a department our size. It's actually a pretty impressive metric. So I'm going to just kind of flip through some of these, but it's just giving you an idea of how I'm trying to get a handle on what we're spending our money on. And we look for trends. For example, the asbestos trend, not really shocking. Maybe that lawsuit practice area would be something I'd want to look into. That advice and training section has decreased, and that's because we were cutting costs due to economic conditions. We actually wouldn't want that to go down. And then I break out litigation spend minus asbestos because we really need to take a deeper dive into this. So just what jumps out at you might be that IP bar, and we had a pretty big case in '08. The other thing would be that product liability bar, the first bar. There's a pretty big decrease. Well, we actually went in and made some changes in our product safety team. So some of the ways we handle things changed, and it actually did lead to lower spend in product liability litigation. So I'm actually on my last slide, second last slide, I guess, and I just want to show you, so how do we use the metrics to make sure we've hired the right law firm? this is a slide that I actually put together for my boss. We have this high-priced firm on one of the coasts that handles a specific practice area, and their rates are really high, the highest in our system. And so, we make sure that we kind of have them toe the line. Well, a local firm that we know their rates are lower, and we're happy with their work. We've worked with them for a lot of years. They came and approached us and said, "Hey, we'd like to put in a bid for that." So my boss asked me to go and do this analysis, and we saw that, wow, even though they're they have high rates, this firm has really cut our costs. And I could see that bar for FY10 was so low that it just wouldn't even make sense to switch. So, at first blush, you might think that's a high-priced firm, the rates are high, boy, we should really go after this other proposal, when actually that really wasn't the case. So my last slide, not going to read, there's a lot of text on the screen, but I want to just kind of synthesize, these key takeaways and how they roll up to a report to our CEO. So, we always predict where our spending, where we're expecting it. In 2009, we knew it was that low watermark, and we knew it was going to increase in 2010. We also were able to identify those headwinds and explain why we had an increase. We know that we spend more on IP work, which was approved and was a good thing, and obviously we're still using these AFAs and trying to insource things, using these metrics to make sure that we're really watching things. And this next bullet, talking about that increase in total spend, we actually expect the spending to go up when our revenue goes up. So when we looked at that metric, it actually was a tiny bit, the percentage was just a little bit lower. So as a percentage of revenue, we did a good job. We obviously look at trends, and this financial planning piece is a big deal because most of the outside counsel costs go to our business units. We actually, as a law department, don't pay for much of it. So, they get socked with these bills in their budget, and they don't want surprises, and so we're able to sort of, keep them up to date on it so that they can do their own planning. And then finally, from a compliance standpoint, some of these things actually make it to the 10K report. So our shareholders know about this. We need to tell them this is what we expect next year. Here are some things that could be serious, and they make it to that annual report. So it's public information, and we have to really stand by what we're reporting.